Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's web seminar featuring the Americans for the Arts Local Arts Agency Census. I'm Eric Giles, and I'll be your host today. It is with great pleasure that I present a noted expert in the fields of arts funding, research, and policy. Randy Cohen, AFTA's Vice President of Research and Policy, is going to give us some insights into the key findings of AFTA's Local Arts Agency Census. Randy?
All right. Well, thank you, Eric. Thank you, everybody on the call. Really appreciate the opportunity to share some findings from our new Local Arts Agency Census, which we have been working on over several years in partnership with the National Endowment for the Arts. We thank them for their partnership and support on this. Actually, as well as many of you, we worked with all of the state arts agencies to make sure we got the most current and comprehensive list of local arts agencies out there in order to make this the most comprehensive survey of local arts agencies ever. We've built a pretty clean list of about 4,500 local arts agencies, and we surveyed all of those folks on the list in 2015 and started publishing our reports in 2016. We received data back from 1,127 local arts agencies. This is a pretty large sample. It's our largest sample of local arts agencies ever, and I've been here at Americans for the Arts doing these for 25 years, and that is a great response rate. We've been doing these surveys so long here, I actually always pull up the old ones. We didn't even ask for fax numbers when I did my first local arts agency surveys because nobody had fax machines. So how things have changed. Just a little background on the local arts agency field itself. We estimate there were about 400 local arts agencies in 1960, and again, that's grown to about 4,500 of them today. We saw the most growth in the 70s and 80s. About 70% of them are private 501c3 nonprofit organizations. About 30% of them are agencies of their municipal government, city and or county. They range in size and budget from all volunteer to City of New York, $156 million. And there's everything in between. The local arts agencies, they ensure the arts have a vital presence in our communities, and they all do it a little bit differently, but they do programs and services and funding and strengthen their local arts industries to make the arts accessible across the community for everyone in the community. Each local arts agency is unique to its community that it serves, and each changes as the community changes, so no two are exactly alike. But what they share is the goal of enabling diverse art forms and culture to thrive, ensuring accessibility, and building healthier communities through the arts. And we look to capture all of that in this survey. I like to say for the survey we took a mighty Susquehanna River approach. That is a mile wide and a foot deep. So we covered a lot of categories, and I'm just going to touch on a bunch of these different categories, and that's not even all of them. But at the end I'll tell you where you can find the reports, which we're pumping out monthly, and it's all free. It's all available on our website. Let's see, going to the next slide. So local arts agencies, as they change, so do their names. So a local arts agency by any name is still a local arts agency. And this is just a sample of some of the responding locals in the survey. And you'll see words like creative economy or heritage and science, zoos and parks. And then you'll see just totally different words like Arts Wave in Cincinnati or For Culture in King County. We see them called all different kinds of things. A lot of communities have more than one arts council. In Philadelphia, for example, there's 3 very vibrant, active arts councils. You've got the Arts and Business Council of Greater Philadelphia. That's an affiliate of the Chamber of Commerce there, and they do arts and business type of work like many of our arts councils, business committees for the arts or arts and business councils. You've got the city office, the City of Philadelphia Office of Arts and Culture and Creative Economy. And then there's a nonprofit one as well, the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance. We've seen this phenomenon a long time, and I know a lot of you have been at your state arts agencies a long time, and you've seen this as well over the years. Generally, this works out just fine as long as both agencies aren't fighting to do the same kind of work. If all three of those agencies in Philadelphia wanted to be the primary grant maker, well, you'd have a real collision there. And we used to see that a lot more, I think, a couple decades back, but things seem to be much more complementary now. We asked folks, the responding local arts agencies, tell us about your service area. Do you serve a single city or a county? And that's what about 2/3 of them do. I would say we have seen growth in recent years of local arts agencies working regionally, serving multiple counties, or in some even across state lines. You've got Quad City Arts that, borders on Iowa and Illinois, and there are a couple of those out there as well. But the majority of them are serving a single municipality, a single city or a county. One of the other things that we've observed that's changed over the years is where within the municipal government public local arts agencies live these days. I think, in the past, you saw much more of them in the mayor's office or reported to the city manager. Now we see more and more, them popping up in landing in economic development or community development or the Parks and Recreation Department. The city of San Jose, that's the Office of Cultural Affairs under the Director of Economic Development in the city. And I think that is in part some of the recognition and aspiration of the arts councils and, what maybe some of the pragmatic aspects that the city hopes to undertake with those folks. Looking at the budget, what's going on with the money? Well, in 2015, which is the last year of the survey, we saw total local arts agency revenues at about $1.375 billion. And that's, by the way, is pretty conservative. That's just the 1,127 responding local arts agencies. Actually, a note about that 1,127, we got pretty much the big ones, most of the middle ones. I think most of the underrepresented parts of the sector are your smaller volunteer local arts agencies. So because that's not even a third of the respondents, I wouldn't expect this number to grow hugely. I mean, it's certainly not going to double or anything like that, if everybody else responded. So I do feel we got to pretty good capture the most of the dollars. So again, $1.375 billion in revenues, total revenues aggregate, over expenses of yay 1.3. So revenues over expenses. You work your way down, you see local government revenues at about $738 million in 2015 directly to those arts councils. All of those numbers went up again in 2016. But in 2015, 48% finished with a surplus. 31% had break-even budgets, and just 21% finished with more expenses than revenues. So overall, the financial health of the arts councils has been pretty good. So where are those dollars coming from? And you can see here a pie chart of what the typical local arts agency looks like. And I pulled out the state arts agency portion at 11% of revenues. 63% of the responding local arts agencies said they receive state arts agency funding. And there was actually an interesting distinction between the private and the public local arts agencies. 70% of the private locals said, yes, we get funding from our state arts agency. 47% of the public government agencies said we get funding from the state arts agencies. So much larger portion of the privates, of course, that's where you're going to see fundraising staff and all those kind of folks. So that's in terms of what percentage of locals are receiving state arts agency revenues. In terms of that piece of the pie, 11% in the aggregate, that represents on average state arts agencies 9% of a nonprofit LAA budget and 15% of a government LAA budget. And so that's how that picture is looking. We did ask also some questions of local arts agencies to forecast what they think the future is going to look like. Do you anticipate any change in arts funding during the next 3 years? And with state government funding to the arts in your communities. And 22% said we're looking at an increase. About 45% said no change, and 26% said a decrease. Another question that we asked is, how important is arts funding from state government and sources and your state arts agency? How important is that in leveraging arts funding from your local government? And so here you really see the importance of state arts agencies. 45% said state arts agency funding is extremely important in leveraging local government funding. 20% said it's somewhat important, and just about 16% said not important. So the vast majority of local arts agencies feel very strongly about the importance of state arts agency funding and helping them leverage local government funding. So what do local arts agencies do in these days? Well, they do an awful lot, and we divided up into these categories. I'm just going to kind of hit these very top line because I'm going to dig into them a bit, but just virtually all of them are involved in advocacy, whether it's for funding or arts education, policy work, whether it's creative economy or community development or research, engaging disaster preparedness and response to the arts. So working at those policy levels. Facilities, 59% of them are involved in rehearsal and performing space facilities, managing gallery space, artist live workspace, arts incubators. See a lot of local arts agencies creating that physical environment in which the arts can take place and thrive. Funding and financing, 53%. We used to call that just plain grant making, but as everybody knows, the money has become very sophisticated these days. Yes, 53% are grant makers, but we also see local arts agencies leveraging funds via bond issues, micro-lending, all kinds of other issues or funding mechanisms that way. Interestingly, some are not allowed to call their allocations grants. They have to call them contracts. And so that's just local nomenclature. Partnership, we're going to talk an awful lot about, but basically local arts agencies connecting other community organizations and leveraging them, to get them to use the arts to help create more opportunities for arts and culture in their community. Programs and events, local arts agencies are presenters. They're typically the ones that are doing public art or free concerts in the park or the art display at the city hall, that type of thing. And again, virtually all of them involved in services to artists, arts organizations, the public, even the business community. And we'll hit more of that as we go along here. But I want to start with LAA Partnerships and Collaborations. And this was really interesting. What we found, 92% of local arts agencies have at least one partnership with a community agency, an agency of government, or a community organizations. Local arts agencies are community connectors. More than half of them partner with a chamber of commerce, with a library, a parks and recreation department, a school district. And so the idea is how do the LAAs help their collaborators advance their missions by using the arts and creating arts experiences for the public, as well as opportunities for both arts and non-arts organizations. So that's the fancy-looking graphic that shows a whole range of types of partnerships. So 92% have one, 76%, so 3/4 have 3 or more. But so what is a partnership these days? We always talk about partnership and collaboration, and so, we decided we need to drill a little deeper into this. And we work with our advisory committee who helped us to develop the survey, which included state arts agencies and researchers and local arts agencies and a variety of folks as well. And we divided up into these 5 categories. And so what do partnerships look like? Well, 79% have informal conversations with a partner organization, right? We've all had these, oh, hey, there we are at the, reception before the theater event or something like that, and yeah, we got to get that awards program going together. We got to get some artists in your public housing thing there, and oh yeah, we'll do that. And well, eventually that moves to 65% meeting regularly with a partner organization. So, the thing's starting to get some wheels now, some traction. And then we asked about, do you work together, plan, fund, and implement programs with your partners? And 75% said yes to at least one of those. And now, you really get into integrating and infusing the arts into those partners. And so 31%, so about a third, said we fund a partner through grants or contracts, and 46% said our partner has fully integrated the arts into their initiatives. And so let me just move here to a more very complicated looking spreadsheet. Mostly just put this here so you could see the breadth and the scope. We asked about 27 different partnership categories, and so you could see 66% are involved with the Chamber of Commerce, and then just working to the right, 51% are having conversations, 28% meeting regularly, so on and so forth. This is actually a really handy tool. We use this. I mean, the data and the information is interesting, but it gives us an idea, and it might give you an idea as well of, what kind of professional development or training or, kind of penetration are arts councils getting with their CVBs or with their libraries or their parks and rec departments. And, who are those 16% that has fully integrated the arts into the Chamber of Commerce programming, your upper right statistic there. And so we can follow up with those folks and start to pull down some real specific examples and help us build some tools and models. So it works as a handy information referral piece as well. So the partnership information, I think, really fascinating and really shows how local arts agencies have become these community connectors. Advocacy, right? Nearly all the local arts agencies indicate some level of involvement in advocacy, and again, typically it's for arts funding, keeping the arts in the schools, or cultural tourism. So we asked the local arts agency respondents, we gave them a big list of case-making statements, and asked them to select the 3 most effective case-making arguments for arts funding for 4 key funding groups. The first one was elected officials, the second one was business leaders, the third one was private sector funders, and the fourth one, individual donors. So here you can see overall, the top 3 case-making arguments for the arts education, economic impact, and improving quality of life. But, as every good advocate and marketer knows, well, you got to segment that market and that audience of yours. And so when it comes to elected officials, their top three in order were economic impact, arts and community development, and arts education. Moving on to business leaders, similar. Number one is economic impact also. Number two, benefit to business. And number three, arts and community development. Now you move on to the private funders, and arts education is on top, followed by improving quality of life and community livability. And then you get to individual donors. Arts education, still number one, quality of life, number two, and yay, arts for art's sake. It was nice to see that still get some traction out there. Very interesting findings on what are the most effective case-making statements for the arts. And again, that's a really helpful tool. That's why at Americans for the Arts, we put a lot of time and investment in, case-making for arts education, for economic impact, quality of life, and community development. And most of you hit all those marks as well. So another thing local arts agencies do is cultural planning. And so we asked folks, within the last year, have you done a cultural plan? 28% has completed or updated a cultural plan. And a cultural plan, it's a community-inclusive process of asking the question, where do we want our community to be culturally in 5 years, and 10 years, and 20 years? And what's our plan of implementation? How are we going to get there? When I say community inclusive, this starts to connect back to all those great partnerships. It's not just artists and arts organizations, but it's business leaders, government leaders, educators and school superintendents, members in the faith community, your hospital CEOs. How far can you reach out and engage folks in cultural planning? And interestingly, again, what's changed? Over the years, cultural planning used to be much more about more money for artists, more money for arts organizations. And that has really evolved to how do we build a healthier community through the arts? Again, using the arts to connect to articulated community priorities. And so that's one way that they've really have evolved. Interestingly, an observation that we've seen for decades, local arts agencies with cultural plans have greater rates of budget growth and local government support than communities that have no cultural plan, which makes a lot of sense, right? You've engaged the community leadership, the people have spoken, this is what we want to see, and it's much more likely to be implemented that way. One thing that has changed, also changed, I guess I should say, is how the arts are becoming part of broader civic planning efforts. And so what you see here, 62% of local arts agencies said, well, we've integrated the arts into the economic development plan. 47% said into the tourism plan. And so we're seeing more integration of the arts into these community-wide comprehensive plans. And so again, I just think that is evidence of how the community embraces some of the very pragmatic aspects that the arts bring to building healthier communities. Now the one, most of us are certainly familiar with, grant makers. 53% of local arts agencies are grant makers or providers of funding. 49% fund organizations, 35% fund individuals, 30% do both. And then, there's some interesting findings, in the report about, 46% have a budget funding limit. So, for example, we won't fund more than 15% of an organization's operation. And 49% actually fund good old operating support. We love that. We're all talking about diversity and equity these days, and so we posed some funder-related questions along that. And so we asked people, do you consider diversity in your panel selection? 78% said, yes, we do. 71% of, these are of grant-making LAAs, right? So 71% asked their panelists to consider diversity in their funding decisions. 42% of grant-making LAAs require grantees to demonstrate diversity in areas such as your artists or your audiences, or your boards of directors. So we are seeing at the grant-making level quite a bit of movement here, but in a few moments I'm going to take a different diversity statistic here, and you'll see, you know, there's some ways we're doing well on grant making. There's a long way to go in some other aspects of it. Okay, slight divergence here. This next statistic is not from the Local Arts Agency Census. It is from our public opinion survey, which we just published last July. And but it's such a good connect. I managed to convince Eric to let me work it in. And what we did in our public opinion survey is we asked, it was a national survey of 3,020 American adults across the country, so huge sample. Worked with Ipsos, which is a huge, highly regarded public polling firm. One of the questions we asked in the survey was what people thought about government funding for the arts. And by a 3-to-1 margin, the public approves of government arts funding. At the state level, 57% of the American public says, yes, I support my state government funding the arts. Only 16% said, no, I do not support that. At the local level, these numbers are almost identical. 58% supports arts funding, 15% says not. So strong support for local and state governments' investment in the arts. But then, you know, we gave people some very specific types of arts funding. And what we found is community-oriented arts funding has very high public value. It's highly regarded. So again, remember, you know, 57, 58% support. But when we said, well, what about using the arts for arts and parks and downtowns and public places? 72% in favor of that. Or so many of us are increasingly getting involved at the local, state, and federal level with returning military personnel and using the arts to help in their transition back to civilian life. 70%. Beautify blighted or abandoned areas, placemaking, right? 69%. Programs, services for the elderly, 70%. Interestingly about that one, as we all get older, more young people are in favor of the programs for the elderly than older people. I'm not sure what to make of that. Anyway, I think the message here is pretty clear. As grant-making institutions, locals, and of course as all of you are as well, the more the public knows what those dollars are for, you know, very specifically, the more in favor they are. See, advancing to the next slide, here's just a few more categories that we asked about. Second from the bottom, 48% to support funding individual artists to make art, and something that locals are doing. And then I thought would be a really provocative one, but hasn't caused much stir. 43% say yes, it's appropriate for governments to provide religious art in public places. So anyway, I thought you would all find that interesting as well. You can read much more about the public opinion survey on our website, but wanted to share that relevant information with you. Community development, you know, we've kind of been talking about it in different ways, whether it's programs or grant making. Again, local arts agencies, 78% of them working to engage their community through the arts. And again, just trying to connect everyone in their community to the arts, whether it's in an arts venue or out of an arts venue, in the downtown or in the public plaza. So local arts agencies, they're typically the ones responsible for, exhibitions at City Hall or festivals or performances in the park. And we see public and private arts agencies very involved with this. 24% of local arts agencies do what we call gap programming, and that is much more activist, I would say. It's targeting a specific underserved segment in the community or fulfilling an arts discipline void and making sure, either that cohort in the community or that art form gets time, there's cultural opportunities in the community. 68%, so about 2/3 of the locals do that by directly presenting. 50% do that by funding among the gap programming folks. So local arts agencies when they focus on community engagement, this is how they're doing it, through funding and through presenting. Public art. 45% of local arts agencies have a public art program. About 450% for art programs across the country, and that's where typically 1% of a city's new building expenditure or renovation of an existing facility is used for art in and around that space. I'd like to have my Parthenon picture up there, just because, it's 450 BC, so it's been around a while. But Pericles had the exact same problems that we did. He put out an order and he said, all right, here's the deal. We're going to build a site on the hill that inspires our community, one so grand that people will come from afar to see it and that finds employment for every hand. All right, so inspires, right? He's looking at quality of life. People will come from afar to see it. There's your cultural tourism. Provides employment for every hand. There's your economic impact number. Of course, he got huge pushback. They say that it was like scholars say it was like $3 billion, cost in today's expenses, but they still use the exact same kinds of funding mechanisms. There were private contributions, the government kicked in money, they used port taxes, dedicated a portion of the port taxes because it'd be bringing in people from afar, and so you've got your dedicated funding revenue sources, and he caused a big stir with the public art program. So public art controversy, funding, just not a new challenge. Of the 45% of local arts agencies that have a public art program, 40% offer tours to the general public, right? If you got to build it, you got to engage people in it. So about half of those have, very formal programs that way. And 37% have public art programs, public art plans for the community. So community public art plans. So again, one additional way that we see locals engaging their community, beautifying their communities. Arts and community development issues. So locals, right, they're building, working on building these healthier communities through the arts. 57% use the arts to address community development issues, and you can see a big list there, but they range from helping underserved youth to homelessness populations to investing in creative economy and cultural districts. I'm sure you're all checked out on these. St. Paul's got their Made Here, artists creating work locally, creating community identity. The city of Los Angeles, they've got artists in the Department of Transportation now to help reduce traffic fatalities. And Arts and Science Council in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, local food movement, they're funding community gardens and on down the line. Cultural and racial awareness, the Regional Arts Commission using the arts, connecting with their folks in the community of Ferguson. So this is something which we've just seen grow and grow. I will say maybe in 20 years ago, it was a much smaller percentage of local arts agencies involved in this kind of work, probably closer to the, 10 to 20%. In this survey, in the 60 largest cities, kind of the urban cities, 75% are using the arts to address community development issues. So 57% across the board, 75% in our urban centers. Another big area of involvement, arts education. 89% of local arts agencies are involved at some level in arts education, and we give people kind of a list there you could see of ways they may be involved. So 89% are doing one or more of those. 73% of locals, arts education is part of their written mission or goals. So this is a really, was a startling statistic to me. 73% of local arts agencies say arts education is part of their written mission or goals. So I would say this is very, very core, very center to these organizations. 47% of locals have revenues targeted specifically for arts education. And the average local arts agency, 19% of the budget is designated to arts education. And we see about 70% of them that are involved in arts education have some kind of staffing, whether it's a coordinator or they're paying teaching artists, that type of thing. So our locals are heavily involved in the LAA and the arts education world. Services, we talked about that a little bit. Local arts agencies trying to create an ecosystem and an environment in which the arts can thrive. And they do that by providing direct services to artists, arts organizations, the general public, the business community. And you can see 88% are providing services to artists. This might be exhibitioning or gallery space, marketing and promotion training, insurance, legal services, artist live workspace. To art organizations, a lot of the above, but a lot of emphasis on visibility, increasing awareness of the arts in the community, connecting. As many of those partnerships are involving actually artists and or arts organizations as well that we talked about earlier. Local arts agencies are providing centralized ticket or centralized marketing programs. Again, Arts Incubator, managing performing space. The general public, online calendars, social media, and then just, of course, all the art in the public places, festivals, public art tours, that type of thing. And another important stakeholder in funding the arts is the business community. And so, I think we used to see this focus more on, our business committees for the arts and our arts and business councils, but those services have really branched out and have been picked up by locals across the country, and you can see a large percentage of them are serving the business community. And so that might be, helping to coordinate board and volunteer placements and, volunteer for the arts type of programs, facilitating artwork loan programs. 41% of local arts agencies give annual awards to businesses to recognize their support for the arts. So recognition, and even coordinating corporate battles of the bands. That's always one of my favorite ways. When you're trying to engage the businesses and then their employees, and maybe you get a dozen companies. A lot of us got that electric guitar still up in the attic, just waiting for a reason to pull it down, right? And so, each of the companies will put together a rock and roll band, and they'll be, they'll play a short set, and it's a big competition. It's a big evening. It's a big fundraiser. It gets all kinds of people engaged. They're a lot of fun. So, we see those in communities as well. So services, direct services, big piece of what locals are doing. I told you we'd get back to some of the diversity questions. And as I mentioned earlier, we asked some opinion type of questions as opposed to just bludgeoned these good people with statistical questions, and one was, respond to this question. My local arts agency has an appropriate level of diversity among staff, board, and volunteers. And you can see there's kind of a 5-point scale there. 35% said, yes, we have an appropriate level of diversity. A larger 49% said, no, I can't disagree with that. You know, a third somewhat disagreed, and 9% strongly disagreed. Well, you know, we asked for demographic information of board and staff, and wow, they're right. Look at the staffing for board and for the staff and the boards. What you're seeing is largely female, largely white, largely over 44 years old. These are numbers that we've seen in the past, and so this continues to be an issue. 39% of local arts agencies actually have written policies about staff diversity. And then for those that don't, 46% said, yeah, we don't have it in writing, but we consider it in our staff policies. And then 25% do not consider it. So 39% have written policies about staff diversity. Interestingly, the percentage who strongly agree that they have appropriate diversity are much more likely to have a written program, a written policy. So you put it in writing, right? You know, we all know this. You start aspiring towards it, and it gives you, you know, a toehold, a place to start. And then you can see some other type of findings here in terms of diversity policies and programs. So I'm going to pause there and throw it open to some questions and answers if folks had any. I will turn it to you, Eric, to facilitate that.
Thank you very much, Randy. And that was a great presentation. And just a reminder, use the chat function on your box to send me some questions. I've received a few, so I'm going to go through what we have in stock here, but I'm always willing to ask some more, so please send them our way. Randy, I'm going to start you off with what is, I hope, a rather softball question to kind of get you in the mode. For local arts agencies that have budgets over $100,000, do you have average or median staff size numbers?
I do. Oh, right, man. Nice easy one to stroke over the fence there. Thanks, Eric. Yes, actually, local arts agencies with budgets of greater than $100,000, 99% of them have at least one paid staff person. Of those under $100,000, about half have staff. So it's almost all above 100 and about half below 100.
Excellent. I have a question that kind of talks a little bit about grants versus services. It looks like there are more local arts agencies that provide services than award grants to arts organizations and individual artists. Do you have any inkling why that may be? Are kind of services a more effective means of support at the local level, or is it a kind of a relative lack of grant making due to insufficient funds?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't say specifically. I think, you know, if there were, you know, a big annual appropriation to be regranted dropped into the lap of many of these locals, that, you know, they probably would take up granting. But a lot of times, you know, these local arts agencies have had grant-making programs and then stopped and involved, sort of migrated their programming and services to other areas. And so, you know, I think a lot of times it's just about fulfilling the need, the service, what's required. You know, for example, the Philadelphia example I gave, you know, not all, they're not all grant makers. They provide programs and services, with an emphasis on different constituencies. On the other hand, in the San Francisco Arts Commission, the city's arts agency, but they also use a portion of their hotel tax to fund the arts, the hotel tax fund for the arts. And so you've got two city grant-making arts agencies in San Francisco. So I think it depends just, what the LAA that is there and what the needs are and, of course, what the available resources are.
Excellent. Kind of sticking with funding a little bit, is there any indication of kind of what's driving the positive trend of kind of increased local government support of local arts agencies?
Well, I think the local, if you look over the years, especially if you compare the trends, NASA always does that great report in GIA where it, sort of tracks all the federal, state, and local dollars. And, I think the local dollars are a little more resilient. I think the closer you, get to the ground, you see a little more resiliency because there is such a focus on arts and community development. And so if you're a legislator locally, you see it all right there. You see it happening. Yeah, times are tight, but man, this place downtown is packed when we do that, festival. And folks love that. And it, you could just feel the esprit de corps and the sense of community. Or, yes, I went and I saw the poetry competition locally, and who knew our kids were so engaged. So I think because the fact that it's happening right there, that does add some resiliency to the local dollars. So what we've seen over, in the past is, when the dollars are good, the economy's good, the dollars are going up. When the economy, like during the Great Recession, we definitely saw several consecutive years, I think 4 years of some decrease in local government funding. So it's not immune by any means, but it has, it's not totally responsive to the economy. It is responsive to, how the arts impact community.
Great. Kind of sticking with this, we have a lot of questions actually related to local arts agency funding. So one is, what are some of the sources of earned income for local arts agencies? Did the census provide any answers to that?
Let's see. We did ask about some, some local arts agencies, are presenters and have programming. And, I guess I'd have to dig into the report a little bit to remember what some of those earned income type of pieces are. But, I think part of their, I guess it just probably relates best to presenting. Nothing's jumping to mind. They do contract work, with some of the partners, for example, to, bring arts in the schools or to coordinate, the Chamber of Commerce's Arts and Business Breakfast. Private ones, certainly many of them have endowments, which yield, annual dollars. Those are earned. So I guess it's a variety of those kind of places.
So another, a final kind of question that I have related to some of the local arts agency funding is kind of, do you know what percentage of their operating budget comes from, say, local hotel occupancy taxes?
I don't have that specifically. And, we just kind of, we group that under local government funding. But I'll say this, those local option taxes are, they're really fantastic if you can get them because, they're the gift that keeps on giving. San Francisco, they've for over 50 years now, they've dedicated a portion of their hotel tax to the arts, and that's, over $20 million a year. And St. Louis has a property tax district. It generates $70 million a year to 3 museums, a zoo, and the Botanical Garden, just some downtown major institutions. In exchange, they provide free admission to the public. Denver, of course, is one of those classic models, the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, where 1/10 of the sales tax funds the arts. That's probably in the range of $45 million a year. That's been picked up in a number of other communities. And then, you know, one I think everybody's probably, you know, heard of is, the Cleveland area, where they've got the cigarette tax. And, you know, that's a 10-year tax on cigarettes. And, you know, that's between 15 and 20 million dollars a year going to the arts. Well, I think what they're finding is people are smoking less and going out of state to buy cigarettes. So, you know, those things don't always last forever. Eric, one of the questions you asked earlier, I did dig up when we were planning this out. You were wondering, well, how does that 11% of average revenue from state arts agencies compare? Is that grown or shrunk or changed over time? I went back to one of our local arts agency reports in the 1990s, 11%. So it's been pretty steady.
Excellent. It looks like I have a couple more questions left, and that looks like just about how much time we have left. So I have one on arts education. So you mentioned that 89% of local arts agencies have arts education programming in schools or communities. Do you know if there's any indication of how this programming aligns with arts education grants and services of state arts agencies? Part of their concern seems to be about whether it's duplicating or complementing the work together. I'm not sure if that's within the scope.
Yeah, I don't know. That's that's certainly a great question. But yeah, I don't know how folks are doing together on that.
Excellent. And I guess one other question, I like this one because it's general, but it also, I think, is going to provide a lot of context for what everyone just saw is, you know, what you've presented in the census mean for state arts agencies and their kind of staff, their partnerships and programs? Is there anything you can kind of pull out of that you can provide as kind of advice for our state arts agency people?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why are we here, right? Well, I think, kind of going through just the, just the different parts of the presentation I hit on this, with, virtually all of local arts agencies involved in some kind of partnerships. 60% of locals are, involved with their Chamber of Commerce. Shouldn't that be 80 or 90%? And so as we do our statewide professional development, here's how to build a relationship with your Chamber of Commerce. Here's who else is in the state has relationships with their Chamber of Commerce. So we can be gathering both, folks on that side of the equation. Public art, a lot of public art programs out there, half the local arts agencies that responded. Many of those have staff. Certainly the Percent for Art programs have staff. Are we getting our public art people together? Arts education staffing, we saw a high percentage of local arts agencies that are doing arts education have some kind of staffing. There's another opportunity to connect people and would answer that previous question. Hey, are we all in line here? Are we our services complementing each other and that type of thing? Making sure we're all collectively getting the best bang for the buck. And these different funding innovations that we see happening. I get, and I'm sure at NASAA, it's the same thing for you all. We get so many calls, right, from a city manager, a state legislator, or somebody like that, or someone, working with them and says, well, my city manager says if I can find 3 people, 3 other cities that are using the arts in transportation, why, he'll go for our arts and transportation program. And, I mean, it's so schoolyard sometimes, but, nobody wants to be the first. And so, looking at a lot of these questions, I think you can just sort of cherry pick some of those key areas or potential partnership categories. And, that's that kind of information referral goes for everybody on this call as well. If you're wondering, hey, who said yes to the Chamber of Commerce, nationally or in my state, whatever, happy to share that information. So, it's a great opportunity to build some leads. But I guess that's how I would think about, just in terms of programming and services and state local partnerships, that kind of thing.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for sharing your work and your expertise. I think that, what I've read of the census and the key findings was fascinating. So I encourage everyone on the call to also go through and kind of check out the information. We'll be providing links to AFTA's website, particularly to the key findings, as well as some of their one-pagers, so you can kind of click through and sort through some of the data on your own. And Randy, you're also bringing forth some more components and one-pagers in the upcoming months. Is that correct?
Yes. Trying to do 1 or 2 a month here, on just different little snapshots on different aspects of the census. And then the other thing we're doing is, remember my mighty Susquehanna River approach, mile wide and a foot deep, where we asked 5 to 10 questions on each of these issues. We're doing follow-up surveys on a number of these categories as well, and those will also yield more follow-up in the coming years. So thanks, everybody. I'm sure I'll see you in a hometown near you soon. It's been great being on the webinar with you all. Thanks.
All right. Again, thank you, Randy, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Just real quick, as you sign out, you'll see a pop-up post-session survey. If you wouldn't mind, please fill that out. It helps us keep providing these timely and informative sessions, and it helps me kind of jigger things the right way so that everybody kind of has a little bit of what they need as our web seminar program runs throughout the year. Thank you very much.